try to do this standing in one position. There might be a little shiftiness from the hips though. On June 14th, 1971, Richard Nixon declared war on drugs. At this time, large numbers of service members returning from Vietnam were coming back addicted to heroin and opium. Among the youth, the counterculture movement had widespread use of marijuana and LSD. Among the general public, the idea of drugs becoming a crisis was becoming apparent. Richard Nixon saw this war as an opportunity for his administration and one that they could fight and win. Since that time, we've spent over $1 trillion fighting the war on drugs and have seen thousands and thousands of people incarcerated. After 4 decades of this war, the people hit hardest by this have been minorities and the poor. We've wasted incredible amounts of money, and drug usage rates across the population have not dropped at all. Not at all. They have remained steady. Now, for the most part in our country, we look at drug offenders as criminals. But some people think that we need to be taking a different tactic with this. We need to actually start treating them as if they were sick and in need of health treatment. Even here in Oklahoma recently, we've passed laws that are trending towards this. And I hope this is going to be a sign of things to come. The policies of the war on drugs have largely been a failure. I believe now is the time that we need to reevaluate and look forward to other options. It's no mystery that our prisons are overcrowded at this time. The U.S. incarcerates more of its citizens than any country in the world by a large margin. According to the Department of Justice, 1 in 5 state prisoners and nearly half of all federal prisoners are in on nonviolent drug offenses. The average prison sentence for a drug offender is 11 years, and their rates of return to prison are high. According to the National Institute of Justice, 76.9% are rearrested within 5 years on drug charges and return to prison. This is also according to the Department of Justice. There were 2.24 million prisoners in the United States as of December 31st, 2011. This accounts for 22% of the entire world's prison population. These large numbers are a concern and are starting to reach the political spectrum. I have 2 quotes for you here. One's going to be from a Republican, one's going to be from a Democrat, and both have been within the last 2 years. I want you to note the similarities in what they're saying. Though only 5% of the world's population lives in the United States, it is home to 25% of the world's prison population. Not only does the current overpopulated, underfunded system hurt those incarcerated, it also digs deeper into the pockets of tax-paying Americans. This is a second quote. It's a stark fact that the United States has less than 5% of the world's population, yet we have almost 25% of the world's total prison population. The numbers today are much higher than they were 30, 40 years ago, despite the fact that crime is at historic lows. Now, the first one was Rand Paul, the second was Hillary Clinton. As you noticed, they were very similar in their message. So on both sides of the aisle, they've identified that this is a problem and identified it very similarly. Now, according to the FBI, crime rates have actually fallen since the war on drugs was declared, and although drug rates haven't changed. Prison population has exploded though. So why is this? Back in the 1980s, politicians discovered if you ran on tough on crime, you got reelected. So across the nation, you saw 3-strike laws and mandatory minimum sentences enacted. 3-strike laws, if you don't know, are if you have 3 offenses, you receive a mandatory minimum life sentence. And you started seeing non-violent drug offenders hit hardest by this. They started receiving larger and harsher sentences than rapists and murderers. And this is across the nation, and it's still going on. So who is mostly affected by this? This is going to be statistics from the census. This is the prison population as of 2014. 37% African American, 32% white, and 22% Hispanic, and these are adult males only. Now, the U.S. population is 61.6% white, 13.3% African American, and 16.3% Hispanic. Drug usage rates across these races are within a few percentage points of each other. Statistically, it's about the same. Blacks, whites, Hispanics, everybody uses drugs about the same across the board. But one of the largest impacts of our war on drugs has been minorities and the poor being arrested and locked away. Now, while there are many problems with our prison systems, with the large numbers of nonviolent drug offenders, there has to be a better way than just locking them up and spending all this money on them. A growing popular method is to treat drug offenders as if they're sick and not criminals. Many countries have started doing this, rehabilitation instead of criminalization, but today we're going to focus mostly on Portugal, because until recently they had a war on drugs type policy, very similar to the United States, and in 2001 they changed that. Now, in 2001, Portugal decriminalized all drugs, all of them. They're not legal, they're still illegal, but if you are caught with a small use, like personal use amount, you're not arrested, you don't have a criminal record. Instead, you're referred to what is called the Commissions for the Dissuasion of Drug Addiction. Now, these commissions are made of three people: a doctor, a lawyer, and a social worker. And they're the ones that determine what your penalty is going to be. In most cases, it's a small fine. If you're a repeat offender, you might be looking at counseling, but oftentimes there's no penalty at all. Now, this is, well, counterintuitive to us Americans who are used to like just hammering down on people. This seems counterintuitive, but it's proven very effective. In the last decade, drug usage rates across our country have dropped, and rates of HIV and sexually transmitted diseases have also dropped. Now, decriminalization is not the only answer. Portugal took the money that they saved from like imprisoning and housing these prisoners and devoted it back into social welfare programs. They also shifted drug control from the Department of, or the Justice Department to the Ministry of Health and made it a public health affair. And this is what Alex Stevens, a professor at the University of Kent, had to say about this. The main lesson to learn from decriminalizing drugs is that it doesn't necessarily lead to disaster, and it does free up resources for more effective responses to drug-related problems. Now, even locally, we're beginning to see this kind of sea change shift. In just this past election, we saw questions 780 and 781 on the ballot. 780, if you don't know what it is, changed certain nonviolent drug offenses from felonies to misdemeanors, max penalty of 1 year in prison and a $1,000 fine, and it reduced the number and duration of state prison sentences for those crimes. That passed, so we also got the vote on 781, which allocates the funds made available from prison cost savings to run rehabilitative organizations that provide drug and mental health treatment, job training, and education programs. So even locally, we're starting to see people understand that we can't just block away our problems. We have to actually treat these problems. Over the last 40 years, we've spent billions upon billions of dollars and wasted centuries of people's lives collectively for problems that we should be treating as a sickness, not as a crime. Now, it is time as we as a nation take a long look at what we've been doing wrong and start looking forward to what we could be doing right.